Oh, yeah.
And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Friday. It's Open Line Friday. That's right, my friends. Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics Live. This is the day of the week where we talk about whatever you want to talk about. You see, during the rest of the week, it's all about me. We only talk about what I want to talk about. And now, of course, you can call in during the week, but if you're not really interested in what I'm talking about, well, I just may just not answer your phone call. But anyway, not today. Today, I placed the program under a great amount of risk and just open the phone lines up, so it's whatever you want to talk about, we'll do. The phone number here in the Cowboy State Politics Studio is 307-374-8989, 307-374-8989. If there's something on your mind that you want to opine about, go ahead and give us a call, let me know, and we'll put you on the air. Now, I've got a busy program lined up for you today. I have an interview with Gun Owners of America's Mark Jones. Now, Mark Jones came on the program to talk about the two bills that should have been introduced into the big, beautiful bill. And those are NFA items, the National Firearms Act items. One of those is about suppressors, and the other is about short-barreled rifles, both of which, the laws against both of which, are a tax. So to get a suppressor, you have to apply for a tax stamp, which costs you $200. Now, you may or may not be given a tax stamp, but even if you are, it's going to take you at least a year to get, sometimes two. I've been in the gun shop several times where people were complaining about how long it's been since they actually applied to get a suppressor, and they're just waiting on the federal government. Well, one of those items to be in the Trump's big, beautiful bill was to eliminate both the tax stamp and the ban on short-barreled rifles, and both of which can be done through budget reconciliation. And the big thing here is they only need 51 votes because both of those items are a tax. They're not a law, a regulation. They're a tax, which I guess you could say that it is a regulation too. But essentially, when you get down to it, they're a tax and they only need 51 votes as opposed to the 60 votes that they would need otherwise. So it's a perfect time to do it. Republicans are in control of both houses of Congress. But those redcoats on the Ways and Means Committee didn't include those two items on the in the big beautiful bill. And so, unless there's a tremendous amount of pressure from us, yeah, it's just not going to happen, which is right now is a perfect time to do it. Well, anyway, we wanted to talk to Mark Jones about it, get his take on it, get him to fill us in on everything that's happening. So we're going to do that here in just a few minutes. But also, I have joining us for the second part of the program, gubernatorial candidate Joseph Kibler is going to be on the program with us. And of course, the phone lines are open. So if you want to call in and ask him a question, you're more than welcome to do that. We're going to visit with him at about 8:30. So lots of stuff going on today's program. But I think what we ought to do is start with the interview with Mark Jones. I talked to him yesterday on the program. Here he is. Joining me on the program is Mark Jones. Mark is the national director or a national director for Gun Owners of America. Mark, welcome back to the program.
Hey, good morning, David, and good to be back with you.
So in Congress right now, there's a couple of bills that were supposed to be included in the budget reconciliation bill. And as I understand it, they weren't. So I guess two questions. First, what the heck are these two bills? And second, what have you heard surrounding? Why weren't they included?
So the two bills, David, are the Hearing Protection Act and the Short Act. And the Hearing Protection Act would deregulate suppressors that are regulated by the National Firearms Act, and the Short Act would change some of the regulations on short-barreled rifles and help make it harder for future administrations to abuse the National Firearms Act like Biden did when he was in office. And it has erupted into a firestorm in Washington because Republicans promised, if they had the majority in the House and Senate, that they would deregulate a lot of these items in the National Firearms Act. So everybody was kind of expecting that to be part of the budget reconciliation process. And when the chairman Kustoff from the 8th District of Tennessee dropped the bill Monday morning, he didn't include those two bills in there.
Oh,
and the gigantic broken campaign promise, and it's turned into one of the biggest brouhahas against Republicans in Washington that we've seen in 4 or 5 years.
well, it's the same thing that we see here in Wyoming. You know, these folks run for office as conservatives, as Republicans, and then when they get into office, they the very first thing they do is drop the ball on their campaign promises and, you know, go about hanging with the Democrats all the time.
Absolutely. I know we see that in our own state legislature. And I will have to say, on this particular issue, the Wyoming delegation is fighting on the right side. Barrasso, Lummis, and Hageman are all on the right side of this. But what we're seeing from leadership in the House, in our U.S. House right now, is just total broken campaign promise. And the excuse we always hear about reforming gun control in Washington is that we can't get past the Senate filibuster. Well, they can't use that excuse in this case because these are the National Firearms Act is a tax. Therefore, this can be done through the budget process, and that's not subject to the Senate filibuster. So the Republicans have no excuse for not doing this. They have a majority in both chambers. And what this would essentially do, one of the things it would do that might be important to your listeners, David, if we get the promises that were made to deregulate something like a suppressor, you could go buy that over the counter. You could go to Rocky Mountain Discount Sports or Joe's Gun Shop or wherever and pick this up just like a scope or a sling and not have to go through the arduous paperwork process the federal government requires, not pay a $200 tax stamp to have that item, which is totally unconstitutional. So Republicans had promised to do these kind of things. Give us the power, we'll do these great things.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they've forgotten their constituents that put them in office back in November.
All right. So you mentioned that, and I covered this on the show yesterday, but a lot of people may not quite understand what we're talking about when we say that many of the things in the National Firearms Act are a tax. Could you explain that?
Yeah, so that National Firearms Act was passed in 1934. It was primarily a response to gangsters and things that were going on back in that
Yeah,
day.
Tommy guns.
And yeah, Bonnie and Clyde, the whole stories people have heard about. And essentially what it did is it put special paperwork requirements, background checks, special fingerprinting, this whole arduous paperwork process, and a $200 fee on items like machine guns, short-barreled shotguns, what they call silencers, which are really just suppressors. They don't
Right.
silence. And it's been that way for 91 years. And it's funny with suppressors in particular, David, you can buy those over the counter in Europe. You can walk in Finland in a country store and buy a suppressor. The Europeans recognize the value of those to protect your hearing, to protect your neighbor's noise privacy, to protect from recoil with these large caliber shot rifles that everybody's getting into these days. Suppressors are great. They're good for your health. And yet we still regulate them like some dangerous thing from the 1930s. It's totally ridiculous.
Well, maybe you should stamp every suppressor with prevents COVID-19 and would have no problem.
Yeah, we know a lot of crazy things were done under the COVID guys. But it is maddening when Republicans made all these promises, groups like ours worked really hard to help them get elected. You know, there's 16 million licensed hunters in this country that would benefit from suppressors being deregulated. You can put them on your antelope rifle or your elk rifle. They don't silence the weapon. They just muffle the sound, protect your ears a little bit. And again, like I said, they reduce recoil. These are common sense measures the Republicans could take, and they always have this excuse of the filibuster in the Senate to not do something.
Well, not this time.
And not this time, because this is a tax, and all they need is 51 votes out of 100 in the Senate. Barrasso and Lummis have been vocal supporting this. Hageman has signed on to both of the good bills in the House, so our delegation's on the right side of this. But folks can put pressure on House leadership back east in Tennessee and Speaker Johnson, of course. We blew the phone lines up Monday. I think we jammed the phone lines in Washington, and that's the only way this is going to get fixed. If it doesn't get fixed now, it may never get fixed,
right,
because once the midterms come, all bets are off.
Right. Well, I mean, it's just another disappointing episode in the saga of Republicans controlling Congress. I mean, we do this stuff all of the time. I mean, and I'm thinking about like the Obamacare thing, where it was John McCain who tanked that whole effort. We had everything right there, and Republicans do what we always do, which is snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. I mean, just absolutely amazing. So you mentioned that this, it's still, all is not lost with this effort, that there's still a possibility that we could get it included. Where do you know where that's at? Is it an amendment to the bill, or?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple more processes where it could be amended in the House. And I know Senator Lummis is working on a version of the Hearing Protection Act to bring from the Senate side. And as I've already said, Hageman is on both bills in the House, both the Hearing Protection Bill and the Short Act, which would deregulate some of these other short-barreled weapons. So I think that if people put pressure on House leadership, and even if you're from Wyoming, it doesn't hurt to call Speaker Johnson. It doesn't hurt to call the House switchboard and leave a message, because those congressional staffers pick these up and get the message to these leaders in the House that, hey, the American people gave you a mandate. Don't forget, your constituents in red states and flyover country who care about these issues. Just, now that you're in power, you can't ignore these people. So I still think there's a chance it'll get amended in one chamber or the other and pass, because they don't have the excuse of the Senate filibuster this year.
All right. Well, Mark, thanks for coming on the program and taking a few minutes this morning to talk to me. If folks want to get a hold of you or your organization, how do they do that?
So they can email me directly with questions at mark.jones@gunowners.org. And they can check us out at gunowners.org on the internet, Gun Owners of America, where there's a lot of information about these issues as well as others around the country there on our website.
All right, Mark. Well, I appreciate it once again, man. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, David.
That was Mark. Oh, not quite done yet, but that was Mark Jones from Gun Owners of America. And, it's the issues that he was talking about. A lot of times, I don't think that we really grasp how idiotic some of our laws are. And so, Agent 29 and I have devised a little show and tell for you. We're going to show you how incredibly stupid a lot of these laws are, and especially the ones that are talking about short-barreled rifles. I mean, they really are kind of dumb, and we'll do that right after the break. Don't forget, it's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. We'll continue in just a second, but first, an absolutely unbelievable moment of capitalism.
U.S. Coin Capital, we hear from Americans across the United States who have a growing concern about the future purchasing power of U.S. paper money. Many Americans are looking for an alternative for long-term capital. For more than 35 years, the people at U.S. Coin Capital have educated American investors on how to properly accumulate United States gold and silver coins. Call us at 1-800-878-2646 or visit us on the web, uscoincapital.com.
Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics.
Some say standing up for what you believe in is being extreme. Ask any woman in Wyoming. They'll tell you this is called courage. The mainstream media claims that holding the line on important issues is being unreasonable. My mom taught me this is called staying true to our principles. In other places, people argue you always have to compromise to get something done. Here in Wyoming, we know that some things are worth protecting at all costs. Some say it's time we give up on the values that made our state great to accommodate toxic culture. I say it's time to stand tall and protect the values that have served Wyoming well for over 134 years. Join Honor Wyoming as we defend and preserve the Wyoming way of life. Find out how you can make a difference today.
Visit honorwyoming.org. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Open Line Friday here on the program. 307-374-8989 if you want to be part of the program. We've got Joseph Kibler coming on at 8:30. Hopefully we'll get some calls. If not, we'll just do an interview with him and find out exactly why he is out of his mind to run for Wyoming's governor. I mean, you got to be a little bit nuts to want to jump into that race. I mean, I understand, you fixed a lot of stuff in the state, but running for office, it is not for the faint of heart, and certainly a statewide office is a big challenge. So we're going to do that at 8:30. But before we get there, we just finished an interview with Mark Jones of Gun Owners of America, and he was talking about a lot of the things that I think get sometimes detached from reality. And the reason I say that is we talk about short-barreled rifles and silencers and all of these really scary things, and we don't really have any idea of what we're talking about. And a lot of these things, to be quite frank with you, are absolutely stupid. So we've got a couple of examples here in the studio, but before we go there, I want to just show you a couple pictures. So this first one, the rifle on top is, I mean, that is entirely legal. It is absolutely 100% legal.
It's actually a pistol.
A pistol, excuse me. You know, it's got a grip and a stock, but okay. So that firearm on top, absolutely legal. Now the buttstock on the bottom of it
Lower receiver.
Lower receiver. There we go.
Terminology. It's an industry term, you know.
Yeah, well, whatever. The thing below the rifle is yet another stock, and if we were to put that one on the pistol, like it would be illegal.
Yeah, that bottom piece there. Now we've overlaid. We put the lower receiver on top of there. That is actually the firearm.
Yeah.
It's the part that is serial numbered. The upper receivers, you can buy different barrel bolt combinations and mix whatever. This particular one happens to be a 300 blackout, which if you've
Great
got
round.
guys out there, it's fun because if you reload, you can make just about anything out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what you're seeing here, we've overlaid them, and pretty much the only difference, like if it was all put together, there's a little bit. It's a little bit shorter than the actual 300 blackout pistol that's all put together.
But that's variable because that lever on that blue stock, you can adjust that height. You can make it longer or shorter or
Sure,
whatever.
sure.
But yeah, but the point being is if you put a fixed stock.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Yeah, if you put a fixed stock on there, now it's classified as a short-barreled rifle and it's illegal.
Yes.
Does not change the way the weapon fires whatsoever.
No. And I didn't put the measurement on there, but it's about 1 3/4 inches around there, right? Between there and 2 inches difference. But that's the only difference right there. That's it.
And that's a minimum. I can extend that buttstock out to where they're virtually the same, or I can make it longer.
Yeah. So, I mean, absolutely stupid. Doesn't change the operation of the firearm at all. But, you know, one is illegal and one is not. And so here in the studio, we have a little bit of show and tell for you. And let's see if we can hold these up to where, yeah, okay. Actually, you know what, Agent 29, just hang out right there. I think that's fine.
I'm going to hang out right here. Notice that the weapon is clear.
Yeah. So it's a little red thing
I'm
on
not
it.
pointing it at anything other than the expensive camera.
Yeah, don't point it at that. So anyway, that's the one in the picture, and it is 100% legal right now. Now, if we were to put the other stock on it, that would make it illegal. And notice in the camera, the two, I mean, there's really only like 1 3/4, 2 inches difference on those. But if we swapped the lower receiver, that would be illegal. Now, here's the really dumb part. There's a grip that Ken has in his left hand. Now, that one, if he were to put that on his pistol, it would be illegal. However, if that grip was not straight up and down and it was angled, that would be legal. Okay, so what I'm getting at is these laws are entirely stupid. They were crafted by people that don't have any idea what they're talking about, and most of the people that write these dumb things probably have never fired a gun in their entire life. And you know, anytime somebody says assault weapon, really what they should say is scary looking weapon, because that's the only thing that any of these laws or taxes are based on. And you know, when the short-barreled rifle ban was put into effect, the politicians were worried about gangsters. That was the reason why the ban on short-barreled rifles was put into law through the National Firearms Act. But nobody in their right mind would use a Tommy gun anymore. They weigh a ton. You can't hit the broadside of a barn with them.
They're fun to shoot, though.
Oh yeah, full auto. They're a blast.
It's a way to turn cash into noise, is all.
Yeah, exactly right. But they're not accurate. They're not practicable. There's no reason why you would use one. But you know, firearm technology has advanced so far that really these laws are pretty out of date. Now let's talk about the ban on, or the suppressors, right? How you have to pay $200 to get a stupid stamp from the government to own one of those. They're not silencers. Okay, so that's a term. That's another term like assault weapon that Hollywood and politicians have come up with. What they are is suppressors. And it doesn't silence the weapon. The only thing it does is protects your hearing. That's it.
It's always funny to me because anything is loud as a firearm. For example, try driving around without an exhaust system, without a muffler
Oh, yeah.
on your vehicle. You're going to get pulled over and say, you've got to silence that. Anything else that was that loud, government would require for safety reasons.
Yeah.
All of these things, that pistol that I had up here a minute ago, much easier to control, and in fact then is more safe
Yes.
with a foregrip, with a decent butt stock on it. Doesn't change the lethality, it just makes it safer.
Right, easier to
because it's
control.
Easier to handle. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's all these things are really, really dumb. And frankly, the members of the House Ways and Means Committee who didn't put these in the big beautiful bill, they're just as dumb as the bills themselves. I mean, the only thing they're doing is worrying about their own political future. So, I mean, absolutely. I almost used the wrong word there. Absolutely ridiculous, and we just need to do away with them. So, what you should do is call the House switchboard. House or the Senate, doesn't really matter. Call John Barrasso and Cynthia Lummis and Harriet Hageman, and just make sure that they're raising a stink about this and that you're not going to put up with it. And that's the only way that these laws are going to change, because obviously the members of the House Ways and Means Committee made some promises to their constituents, and they're not sticking by them, which is what we see from the redcoats all of the time. Oh, couldn't get it done. Oh, it was really hard. Couldn't get the votes, but we sure worked hard at it. We'll try again next time. Yeah, it's all bull crap. None of them really want to do what's right, so we got to force them to. And if not, we need to make it very clear that they are not going to be in office, for much longer. So let's see here. Coming up in about 5 or 6 minutes, we're going to talk to Joseph Kibler. But before we get there, maybe you've seen this picture. Let's see here from current slide. Okay, so this was a post put up by James Comey, former FBI director James Comey, and he put this on Instagram yesterday, and it says 8647. So, of course, 86 is used by a number of organizations to mean you're out of it, you're done with it, they've been eliminated, and of course 47, that could refer to, I don't know, the 47th president of the United States. Here's the problem with this. If this were you or I walking along, we're like, oh, hey, look at these seashells. Yeah, we'd probably get a visit from the Secret Service, but there really wouldn't be anything with it because, all right, bad joke, bad bad form. We probably shouldn't have said that. But when you're James Comey and you're the former director of the FBI, how many evil people does that guy probably know? How easy could it be that little post on Instagram, could be interpreted to mean, hey, I want you to go do something to the president? I mean, it's incredibly dangerous, and I honestly can't believe that he was so stupid that he actually did that. I mean, just absolutely incredible, and there's no reason why he should have done that. So let's go ahead and take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Joseph Kibler, who is out of his mind running for governor, I guess. Who in their right mind would want to do that? We don't know, but we're going to meet somebody here in just a second. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. If you miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics Live, you can always go to the live replay, which is located at the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, under the live replay button. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn. All right, welcome back to the program. And yeah, we cut the ad a little bit short because, I know that even if you are completely out of your mind, your time is valuable. So, Joseph Kibler, welcome to Cowboy State Politics.
Hey, good morning, David. Thank you for having me today. Great to be here.
Yeah, man. Well, I've been meaning to talk with you for a while. It's just, all sorts of crazy stuff happening. So I'm glad we could actually make it happen. So anyway, welcome to the program. And
thank you. Great to be here.
Why don't you take a few minutes and just tell my audience about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, good morning, Wyoming. Good to see you all. Good to see you. I guess you guys are not in front of me. I don't think maybe you guys can see me on the live feed. David,
yeah.
Can they see the live feed? Oh, good.
Absolutely.
That's fabulous. Glad to be here. My name is Joseph Kibler. I'm 45 years old. I live just outside of the great city of Wyoming with my wife and 3 kids. Homeschool dad, Christian, business owner. I was an EMT firefighter growing up. Facilities director. Spent my life in leadership, David. So yeah, you kind of opened the segment with who in their right mind.
Yes. I really want to know, have you visited a psychiatrist recently?
Yeah, David, I keep asking myself that question from time to time as well. Last summer, what happened, David, was I was sitting here at my little gentleman's farm just north of Cheyenne, and it occurred to me that our freedom is sort of a facade. Everything is permission-based. My campaign slogan is give freedom back. And the reason for that, David, is because I kind of realized that we have this sort of dream or idea of what Wyoming is as just regular citizens, right, David? And as I'm growing my little farm and raising my family here in Wyoming, it's occurred to me that I need permission for everything. And it's time for regular citizens like me to step up to the plate, to throw our hat in the ring, to put our neck out and go, you know what? It's time for us to truly have a citizen government, a government that can understand what people go through every day. As a business owner, the struggles that happen there, a father, a breadwinner, all of these things, these challenges that we have. And so for me, it's real simple, David. I want to unwind bureaucracy. And I think that starts at the top. And I think that we need leadership that's going to go, wait a minute, is this a Band-Aid? Or is this an actual solution to something? Because what we're seeing a whole lot of in legislature, and whether it's our current legislature or past legislature, is we're just seeing more government in a different way. And what we need to do is have principled leaders that will take this wall of government and they will tear it down to the studs. Now, I'm not saying you rip the whole building down, right? Because I don't think that we should do that or that we can do that. But you tear it down to the studs and you keep the things that are valuable and that work for the people, and you start doing that, and then you start rebuilding it over again. I do the same thing with my business, David. And so I think that's what we need to do with government, and that's really inspired me to run.
Okay, well, great. I mean, I'm glad that you're throwing your hat in there, but it's it's a pretty big task. And I want to ask you some questions about that here in a little bit. But first, I'd like to continue to get to know you a little bit. So are you a Republican, Democrat?
Running as a Republican, absolutely. I've been a principled conservative my entire life. I mean, since the day I started voting when I was 18 years old, I've always been a principled conservative. I've always been really interested in politics, but never just felt like it was the right time for me or in leadership. And I say servant leadership. I've got a vast background. I've been chief operations officer. Obviously, I'm a CEO. I own a company. I was a firefighter and company officer for many, many years. And so I love leadership. I have a passion for leadership. I have a passion for people. I have a passion for listening to people, David. And I think that that's, whether you're right, left, or middle, I think what a lot of people feel, and I'm going to go to the feeling side of this, is it just, if somebody would just listen to what we say, that would make a difference. And so that's a lot of my inspiration for doing this and why I'm doing this.
All right. So you said that you're conservative running as a Republican. So if you could for me, what does that word conservative mean? I mean, what does it mean to be a conservative? And is that any different than just being a Republican? Or are they the same thing?
I think, David, in a lot of ways, there can be a difference, especially with what we see on the national stage from the Republican Party, right? I think it's a little bit different here in our great state. But I think when you think about conservatism, what it represents and what we're getting in supposed conservative, I think conservatism are two different things. Because what we're seeing conservatives do right now is, yeah, oh, look at us, we're saving all this money, but really all we're doing is moving things around in government. We're just moving chess pieces around. We're not being truly conservative. What does it look like for me? Well, I could talk about property rights. How about you actually own your property? How about you actually own the dirt? You own what's on top of the dirt. You own what's under the dirt. That's conservatism. Education, teaching your kids the way you want to teach your kids. And we're working towards that. I mean, we've got a lot of progress to make, but we're working towards that. Healthcare. You know, our doctors and our practitioners are hogtied by legislation and rules and regulations and processes that they can't really heal people. They can't really do what they've been called to do, which is to heal.
Okay.
You know, and that's conservatism. Guns, Second Amendment right. I think I should mention this, David. We're still messing around with the Second Amendment here in Wyoming. We're sort of getting rid of things, but we're making rules around it. Here's how I see it. This is conservatism. Wyoming respects the Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States. We accept the good and the bad that comes with that. End of story. Second Amendment rights, black and white. But we don't have that here in Wyoming. And we're trying to kind of figure out ways to legislate these gun-free zones and make all these rules and how we could jump through these hoops. So to me, conservatism is true freedom, which means that I don't need permission for it.
Okay. All right. So I want to get to guns in just a little bit, because I don't know if you were watching the program before we brought you on. Today's episode is all about guns. In fact, we have several of them in the studio today. So we'll get to that in just a second. But one of the things that's super important to me, and I know that it's important to a lot of Wyoming conservatives and Republicans for that matter, is the question of life. So talk to me about abortion. Do you agree with abortion? Do you think that it should, maybe we got to have some exceptions? Is it wrong? I mean, where are you at with that?
Absolutely. You know, you're not going to hear me talk a lot about this issue on my campaign trail, and I'll tell you why, David, but I will address it. And it's because it's really simple for me. Life begins at conception. Abortion is not an option. So that's my stand on abortion.
Okay,
now let me set that aside. Let me set that aside for a minute and go, well, Joseph, why aren't you going to talk a lot about abortion? Because, David, I think it's more important that we talk about the why. I think abortion is the result of something, right? The number one issue.
Obviously, it's a result of something.
Right. Well, yeah, I get that. But it's the result. You know what? The number one issue that we have is we have several generations of folks in general that don't value life.
I agree.
What if, David, we put as much energy into as much energy as we put into the abortion issue? What if we actually looked under the hood and went, why? Why do we have this problem? Well, because we don't value life. What if we put as much energy into teaching our kids values, like valuing life? Like that you have to own the responsibilities and the consequences of your decisions, whether it is good or bad, or maybe it's a child, right? That's a responsibility, but we live in a deferred responsibility culture. So what if we started with values, started with responsibility? Would we win more of that abortion argument, which, by the way, that we have beaten to death? But what if we took that energy and put it towards teaching people the value of life and doing that? Maybe we would start winning more of that abortion battle.
No, I absolutely agree with you. And so let me just ask you, I want to play devil's advocate with you a little bit, because I think that a lot of times this issue gets a little bit muddied. And, you know, if you've spent any time in Cheyenne, I mean, you live around there, so I'm assuming you've been down to the Capitol when they're talking about this sort of stuff. But, I mean, the issue gets so muddled that sometimes it's really hard to tell where people are at. Okay, so let me just ask you some real quick questions, quick responses, okay? So should we have any sort of exceptions? Life of the mother, rape and incest, should we have any of those?
Great question, David. Life of the mother, I have an almighty maker. It's above my pay grade. I'm going to say I'm not fully formed on that, David, and here's why. I feel like it's a moral conflict that I have, and I'm not afraid to be honest with that. You know, my wife actually was recommended that she be aborted because her mother was going to die. And I'm actually married to someone who should have been aborted because she was an ectopic pregnancy. Boy, that word didn't come out very good. So, but her mom decided, no, I'm going to have and she ended up, of course, we have a grandma, and
thank
I
God.
have my wife. But that being said, I feel so much like that's above my pay grade. My creator, I have a question for my creator in regards to that issue, and it's the life of the mother. But I would say on the side of the rape victim, first of all, I can't even relate to that experience, what they're going through. Can we give them more support? Yes. I would rather not see that. And you don't see those rape victims that have had their children say, gosh, I regret having this child. You don't see that. You don't see that. But you do see those that do get an abortion because of that horrible situation, that evil situation that they've been through. The regret there. And so for me, life of the mother, that's a moral question I feel is above my pay grade. I'm still thinking about that one, David.
Oh, I think that's fair. I mean, I think too often, a lot of people make quick decisions and they're kind of afraid to say, hey, I don't know the answer to that one. So I think that's okay.
Yeah, that was above my pay grade. But I will say this too. What ties into this when it comes to rape, especially, David, is we don't have capital punishment in a meaningful way. And what if capital punishment was met with swift capital punishment, right? Capital crimes.
Right.
And so if I do that to somebody, if I commit that evil against someone, that my life is forfeit me because of that, when proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, right, in our court system, and my life is forfeit me that, and maybe you get 2 months to repent and say you're sorry, and then it's game over. If we had a justice system that had swift justice, perhaps we'd see less of that type of evil in our society as well. Just tossing.
Fair enough. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about education. We've got a lawsuit against the Wyoming legislature, evidently because we don't buy enough computers and we don't buy enough lunches, that we're not spending enough on Wyoming education. If you're successful in your quest or your campaign to become the Wyoming governor, you're going to have a big say in that. So what do we do? Well, I guess first, let's just go there. So first, do you think we spend enough money on education or not? And I guess the second part of that is, if you think we spend too much, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, so Wyoming is one of the highest spending states per student in the U.S. when it comes to education. So the short answer to the question is, I think we spend more than enough on education. Education is one of those things, David. I'm tired of our kids being political pawns for the last 2 decades. And we keep legislating education like we're going to fix it, right? Just adding layer and layer upon it. Education is one of those areas, one of those departments in government where I feel very strongly it needs to be torn back to the studs. You get with the leaders of legislature, the leaders of education in the state of Wyoming, you bring them to the table and you hash it out. We got to bring this thing down to the studs, stop legislating it to death, and actually come up with a solution. Our kids can't read. We're so proud of the fact that like 46% of our kids can read at grade level.
I know. Absolutely crazy.
Wait, what? Wait, what? What is that? This doesn't even work in my brain, right? Why are we proud? Oh, because we're higher than almost everybody else in the nation. That's still not something to be proud of. This thing needs to be torn back to the studs. We need to get back to reading, writing, and arithmetic in 1st through 4th grade, and then interest-based learning in the afternoon. Reading, writing, and arithmetic in 5th through 8th grade. I've got some crazy ideas for education, David. I don't know how much time we have, but
well, hold on. Why don't you hold that thought? We're going to take another break, and when we come back, I want to hear your crazy, absolutely insane ideas about education. But we'll do that when we come back.
Sounds good, David. Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll continue with Joseph Kibler, who's running for the Wyoming governor. It's Open Line Friday on Cowboy State Politics. If you want to be part of the show, 307-374-8989. We'll do that when we come back. It's spring-ish in Wyoming. Well, what that means for the uninitiated is that it's going to be 70 degrees one day and then snow 1.5 feet the next. And really, if you don't like those two options, just wait a little bit. The weather will change. I know, it sounds a little stressful, but really you should put your mind at ease and buy a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They'll keep you warm and dry even on the nastiest, coldest spring-ish day, and they'll keep you cool and dry even when it's 75 and sunny. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election. Siberia.
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada. Straight to hell. Iceland. France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property, everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy state politics is only going to continue to expand. It's the largest political program in the state of Wyoming, and it's only getting bigger. You can watch the program on YouTube, Facebook, X, on Rumble. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcast, which, by the way, you probably don't want to miss tomorrow's installment of the podcast. I'm just telling you, it's going to be a biggie. And, you know, one of the things that I'm super proud of is that, I just make some politicians uncomfortable sometimes. And, hey, man, sunlight is the best disinfectant. Well, it's Open Line Friday here at Cowboy State Politics Live. The phone number in the studio is 307-374-8989. 307-374-8989. We are joined with Joseph Kibler, who again, why anybody would want to do what he's doing, I have no idea. But he's running for governor. And so yeah, well, look at him. Woo! So before the break, we were talking about education spending. And Joseph, you said that you've got some real wacko ideas on how to fund Wyoming education. Tell me about them.
Well, first of all, I'm going to step out. I'm going to come out and say I'm a homeschool dad, and I understand that that's not for everybody in Wyoming, and that we have a public school system that needs to work for those families the homeschool doesn't work for, right? We need to have an education, and we know this across the nation, and we've been using our kids as political pawns for decades. So it's time to pull it back to the studs. Funding wise, you know, we could talk an hour about education, so I'm going to try to go really high level here, David, so that we don't get too stuck in the weeds, because then I'm going to talk about property taxes and all kinds of other things too. So let's talk about education first of all. We need to tear the thing down to the studs, like I kind of mentioned before the break, David. And what that means to me is, here's how I see education. We need to be equipping our kids for life. We ought to be giving them those values like valuing life, like we talked about a little earlier, David, about taking responsibility and ownership for your own decision, be they good, indifferent, or the result, a child is a result. We need to bring values back into our schools. But what we need to do, and this is my broad strokes on education, but I would bring the education experts and the leaders of the legislature together, and we could duke it out at a table. And by the way, I would do that live in front of the people of Wyoming.
Can we have a rain? You know, maybe with a referee?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We'll
Okay.
have a ring and a referee. Maybe I'll be the referee. I don't know. And we're going to duke it out live in front of the people of Wyoming so they can see what's actually going on in their government. But this is what I think. First to fourth grade, you do reading, writing, and arithmetic in the morning. And then I realized, ideally for me, I'd send all the kids home and they'd go home. Now I realize our culture doesn't, we've got working parents and two parents at work, stuff like that. We can't do that really for a lot of our public school kids. So the afternoon is interest-based learning and the kids get to pick what they want. If they want to be in the Lego room in the afternoon and build things, they build things. If they want to be outside playing, when the weather's good, they can be outside playing, right? They want to look through microscopes and learn about that stuff, they can do that. They want to learn about music, they can do that. And they have all these interest-based learning activities in the afternoon. Same thing with 5th through 8th grade, reading, writing, and arithmetic in the morning. Let's stick to it. And you know what? In reading and writing, you can learn history. You can learn some of things about science. You can do some of those other subjects, but focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic. Same thing in the afternoon, interest-based learning.
Okay. All
a
right.
little bit more advanced.
Okay.
And then 9th and 10th grade, you get these kids ready to go, and they're done at 10th grade. Crazy, right? Because they can read, write, and arithmetic. Those people that want to go into trades, they go to trade school. Those people that want to be a doctor or go to a lawyer, they go to a college. And at that college, all they learn is how to be a lawyer. They're not learning we waste so much of our kids' early lives by sending them to school for 12 years, and they still can't read and write when they get out. So what are we doing? So let's get radical about it. Let's tear it down. Let's do reading, writing, and arithmetic and interest-based learning, and let's get these kids to work and to life earlier and sooner.
Okay.
There you go. Makes sense.
I like it. All right. Now we know that it's the spending that drives the taxes, and right now one of the biggest issues that everybody in Wyoming is dealing with is property taxes. So I guess first a question, you mentioned it earlier in the interview that people ought to be able to own their own property, and I absolutely agree with that. But you have to have some taxes to run the government. I mean, the essential services of the government, you got to have some taxes. So as governor, what do you want to see as our tax structure? What do you want to do?
Sure, David. Let's start local, then I'm going to go federal as well, because
Okay.
I think it's important that the people of Wyoming understand the federal conversation I want to have as well. On the local level, here is the property tax plan that we need to do. One, and I know the assessors have said, we can't possibly do this. No, we can. We will, and we will do it. We will tax people based on when they bought their home. So if you bought your home, 15 years ago for $150,000, that's your tax. Because you know what we've had to do, David, is we've had to make a mountain of exemptions this high because we got all these problems, right? What if those people that bought that house 15 years ago and for $150,000 can afford that tax? So and the person who buys a home yesterday for $1 million can't afford that tax. So what you do is you tax based on when you bought your home. There's more complexities to that, but let's just leave it at that. Period. That's what you do. And then you work to phase out property taxes entirely. You have to phase it out because you never have property ownership. And we know that. And that's an argument that we all know. Because you're still paying rent, even if you paid your mortgage, you're still paying rent to the local municipalities and stuff like that. And you're like, then you're just, well, what about funding, Joseph? Well, let's expand our energy. And this is why I have a two-part plan for property taxes. One, you go back to what you paid for your home and it never changes. That eliminates all the exemptions we currently need.
Okay, acquisition value then?
Yeah, acquisition value. That's all you need. And then if you refinance your house, right, you have now realized an additional value, then your taxes change, right? And then you sell your home. I sell my home tomorrow to somebody. They're going to pay that new that tax at that rate, at what they bought the home for. But then part two is getting rid of property tax entirely. But then you're like, Joseph, how do you do that? So you have to have a plan to do that. But we can do that in Wyoming with energy and rare earth resources and minerals. We can do that with tourism. We can do that with consumption-based tax, David. I think that I like consumption-based tax because it means that if I decide to go out and purchase X, then I could pay taxes on that, a little more taxes on that, right? To fund things. People use education and firefighters as the huge, hammer for property taxes. In Wyoming, like only 7% of property tax actually goes to education. We get a ton more revenue from, school property leases, stuff like this, all these different engines that we have funding our schools. So it's not a huge hit. You got to think about your local first responders and stuff like that. But it's wrong for politicians to keep using these things to beat everybody over the head into submission, because that's what it is. And we can find creative ways to fund, whether it's consumption-based tax or whether it's some sales, which is a sales tax, right?
Mm-hmm.
But man, Wyoming is massive. Energy, rare earth minerals. There are things that we can do here in Wyoming to fund to where people don't need to pay property taxes. This is not rocket science. We can do it. And we're being held back. Well, we've been held back, right? For a decade with the Obama administration, the Biden administration and stuff. So we can open some of this stuff up and we can get to no property tax. I believe that, David, and I think we should do it.
All right, let me ask you a question on that. So, I mean, there is an argument to be made where if we get rid of property taxes, we could shift everything to, a sales tax. I mean, Steve Harshman has brought that up for the last, 3 years. I mean, for me, it looks good on face, but then I kind of wonder about how many different services that aren't taxed right now that will be taxed later. So what would you say when, to the argument that, hey, man, a sales tax, while it sounds good, it's the most regressive tax that there is, that it disproportionately affects those people of lower incomes more than it does somebody who makes, $100,000 a year. So, I mean, how are you going to account for the need to increase the sales tax rate to recoup all those taxes that we lost getting rid of property taxes?
Well, I don't think you only do it, David, with sales tax. In other words, I don't think we go, okay, well, let's do this math. All right, well, gosh, we got to add, 5% sales tax, right? We don't need to do that, David. How about we stop giving massive corporations all these huge tax breaks, right? How about we stop, subsidizing things and go, hey, no, you know what? You want a freaking wind farm, you pay for it.
No, I'm all in favor of that.
You run it like a business. You run it like I have to run my business, right? You want to build a data center? Cool, build it. You've got the money, go build it, and you're gonna get taxed just like everybody else. But no, we're going to give you millions of dollars in subsidies and all of this hoopla, right? We're going to hand it to you. By the way, you've got plenty, and we're going to take it from those poor people that you're talking about, David. So I think there's a lot of ways to do that. Energy is a big way to do it. By the way, not necessarily green energy per se.
There's nothing green about it.
No, because we all know there's nothing green about it. In fact, I told someone the other day, David, I don't want to store those windmill blades in our Wyoming coal mines. I want to send them all to California where the power's going, and they can deal with the problem because it's their stuff. It's their windmill blades.
Yeah, it's their problem.
Right? Yeah. But anyway, but we can do it with tourism. We can do it with energy, David. And so it doesn't just have to be on the burden of just, well, let's just do a consumption tax, sales tax, and do that. Because I'm not for income tax. And when it comes to income tax, David, on the federal level, I want to see flat tax. We got to stop these, what is it, 10,000 pages of tax regulation?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Right, it's ridiculous. It needs to be one page, flat tax. Be done. Right. Everybody gets taxed 10%. If you're under 50,000, you don't get taxed. By the way, I'm just spitting fake numbers out. I'm not like going, hey, this is like the numbers we need to be at. But the point is we just got to stop this madness completely. And in doing that, we give tons of money back to the people.
Okay.
So those are some of the conversations I want to have about taxes.
We've got a few minutes. Hold on just a minute, Joseph. We've got a few minutes left, and we'll go over a little bit today. But there's one big question that I'm sure you've thought about, is that when the governor's race gets a little bit closer, Republicans are probably going to do what Republicans always do, which is a whole bunch of people think that they're going to be Wyoming's governor. And there's already some folks in the race, yourself included. Brent Bean said he's going to run for governor. Last go round, he got 50,000 votes. There's probably going to be some other people that jump in. Nobody knows what Harriet's going to do. So how are you going to run your campaign so that you end up on top? I mean, you got a lot of pretty well-known folks that may jump in the race. How are you going to run your campaign so that it's Joseph Kibler and not, Brent Bean or Eric Barlow or Harriet?
Yeah, absolutely, David. You know what? People, not PACs. That's how I'm going to run my campaign. We toss this word around, grassroots, right, David? I'm a grassroots campaign, but, and then you look at the money, right? So people, not PACs. That's going to be my priority as I run for governor. The other thing is I've reached out to all these folks and I want to get them in a room and talk.
Yeah.
I want to do something that maybe doesn't happen. I'm going to share my heart for governor with these people. with Brent. I've reached out to Brent multiple times. He said we'd get together. It's kind of gone silent on that end of things, but I'm going to keep reaching out and say, hey, let's sit and have coffee. Let's have a conversation. What's your vision? I'm going to share my vision with you. Let's figure out how we can find a way, some common ground. Maybe we end up working together. Maybe there's some mutual support there. You know, I've heard a lot of people say that if Hegman runs, that they're going to just drop out. You're not going to get that from me because the leader doesn't drop out. I want to sit down and have a conversation with her. Talk to her. Let's have a conversation. Let's figure it out. You know, I think that, and here is where I separate from party in general, David, and I'm not afraid to say this on the public forum, is that we get these preordained people that the party picks, and the people don't have an opportunity to pick or have a voice in that. So I think bringing regular citizens like myself to the table and go, let's do this together. And I know Brent is a lot like that as well, David.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
And by the way, before I'd done a lot of digging into him before I decided to do this last summer. And honestly, if you put he and I in a room, I might have a slightly different approach than him to like issues like property taxes and stuff like that. But we're two peas in a pod in a lot of ways, David. So then the question becomes, well, then who becomes, you know, sort of, we have all these golden calves, right? And no real leader. I think we got to see it because it could be a huge field, right? There could be a dozen people in this race, David, or it could be me and Harriet that run. So we don't really know till we know.
Well, no, I think that's absolutely right. That right now we don't really know anything except, of course, that you're running for governor and Brent is running for governor. But beyond that, who knows else? Anyway, before I let you go, why don't you tell my listeners how they can get a hold of you? If they have questions, if they want to email you, how do they do that?
I'd love to hear from anybody. So first of all, they can go to my website, joseph4wy.com. That's joseph4wy.com. On there, that's probably the best way to go, David, because they can email me, they can text me, they can call me. They can connect with me on social media through the website, joseph4wy.com. And if they want to get involved, great. If they want to ask me questions like you're doing today, David, great. I'm happy to have one-to-ones. People want to sit and have coffee or they want to Zoom. I'm available completely. So hit me up, reach out to me. I look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to visit with me on Cowboy State Politics. And good luck on your campaign.
Hey, thank you, David. And I hope we can do this, every couple of months or something. I'd love to hang out with you and chat to your audience.
Yeah, we didn't get any callers today, but that's all right. It's a Friday, and hey, summer's kicking off, so I'm sure
It's summer brain.
Yeah, man, there's probably some people going to go fish in the rain or something. But
well, I'll tell you what, David. Right after I get off of this call, I am going outside to the garden. So that's what I'm doing. So I hear that sun comes out, and so do we. So there you go.
All right.
Thank you, Dave, so much. I really appreciate your time today, and appreciate the chance to talk to Wyoming today.
All right, fair enough. His name is Joseph Kibler, and he's running for Wyoming governor. That'll do it for today's installment of Cowboy State Politics. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. I mentioned that I got something big for tomorrow, and, well, you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it at all. It's going to be fun. But that's Friday. Have a good weekend. We'll see you on the podcast tomorrow.